I am alongside the Chicago River at Clark Park Boathouse, a very popular place where people will launch their canoes and kayaks to go ahead and kayak along the river. However, I'm here for two reasons. One is to point out that the concrete that we just saw is permeable. So one of the solutions to the urban runoff problem is to use permeable types of concrete which allow water to percolate through into the underlying soil. But I'm here for one other reason that might actually concern the kayakers and canoers. Chicago has a very well-established sewage treatment system. It's relatively modernized, it uses new technology in order to limit the amount of bacteria and waste product that ends up entering to areas where our waste is disposed of. However, our storm drain system and our sewage system is the same thing. So whenever it rains, there are what we call overflow events, where there's just too much water in the system to properly process out of it. And right behind me is one of these sewage outflow pipes. When it rains, the river pretty much is our dumping place for, well, raw, untreated sewage. Now, some time ago, the Chicago River used to not flow into the Mississippi River. It actually used to flow into Lake Michigan. Chicago got concerned about, our sewage being dumped into Lake Michigan, which is our clean water source, and instead we did a massive engineering project to reverse the flow of the river. Now the Chicago River does flow into the Mississippi River eventually, much to the dismay of St. Louis. One of the great things about living in Chicago is the investment that the city has put into green spaces that are in the heart of the city. I'm at Montrose Point Bird Sanctuary, a natural area that was established for, the benefit of native and migrating birds. This ends up being home to a lot of birds throughout the year, and without this area, bird migrations and native birds would struggle to find useful habitat. Chicago is full of green spaces like this. In fact, you can take the Lakeshore Trail, which is a walking and biking trail, from the north side all the way down to the south side in virtually uninterrupted green space. There's a lot of these trails in Chicago, and in fact, the county that we're part of, the Cook County area, has an entire forest preserve system that has plenty of hiking and outdoor recreational opportunities for us, which also serve the benefit of, keeping natural areas like this intact. This, however, is not without its challenges. Maintenance of areas like this is an ongoing process, making sure that impacts from human use isn't disturbing the natural environment, keeping invasive species at bay. Some areas of the Cook County Forest Preserve system even do restoration work where they do their best to restore the quality and species diversity of an area to before colonial times. Areas like these are a gem in Chicago, and is definitely one of the driving factors about why I still stay here as somebody who loves the natural environment. It's there in every city. You just have to find it. Where I'm at now is Montrose Beach, and a large part of this is actually closed off, and it's closed off because we have a nesting pair of piping plovers. Piping plovers are an endangered species, and anytime an endangered species is found in an area, the Endangered Species Act actually gives us the right to shut down really anything we want for the protection of that species. Behind me is a very important piece of Chicago environmental infrastructure. It's the James Jardine Water Purification Plant. It takes water from Lake Michigan and purifies it and filters it and provides almost 2/3 of Chicago's drinking water supply. Where I'm at right now is an old, since decommissioned coal-fired power plant that is in the process of being demolished. Well, it's decommissioned, so how is it an environmental problem right now? See, some time ago, they tore down, through a botched demolition, one of the smokestacks without informing the rest of the community. I'm shooting this in the middle of the coronavirus outbreak. The air quality is already, questionable, and here they're trying to tear down this thing without letting the community know that there's going to be potentially toxic dust in the area. You see, coal ash, or what's left over after the burning of coal, is considered toxic waste. So who knows what was put into the air when this thing was knocked over? There's actually more to this. Chicago is really the tale of two cities. There is the relatively affluent north side and the relatively poor south and west side. Things like this, in industry, pollution, they tend to be most concentrated in the poor neighborhoods of Chicago, which disproportionately affect the population here, which is a majority minority population. This is the dark side of environmental justice in Chicago. Poor communities take the brunt of environmental issues, and this isn't just true of Chicago. This is true of virtually every single major city where so many environmental issues are, concentrated in poor and minority neighborhoods. More can be done. More should be done to improve the quality of these neighborhoods. There's fewer trees here. There's fewer parks here. That is absolutely unacceptable, especially today. There's another issue in the south and west side of Chicago, other than the pollution and all of that stuff, is it's a food desert. Communities here have trouble getting fresh food. Now, don't get me wrong, there's convenience stores all over the place that sell processed and packaged goods, but that's not healthy food. So, aside from being a public health crisis, it's also an environmental crisis because processed food has a higher carbon footprint. More can be done and should be done in these communities, in these cities, for our environment and for our people.
Chicago does have one thing going for it, though. We have a pretty good public transit system. It is a combination of a train system, which Chicagoans affectionately call the L, and a bus system that does connect pretty much the entire city. Speaking of connecting the city, let's take a lapse and look at urban sprawl in Chicago, all the way from the inside of the city to the suburbs.